Have you ever noticed how the moment someone compliments you, you shrink? It happens in the tiniest, almost invisible ways. Someone says, "Wow, you're so talented." And before the warmth of that moment can even settle, your reflex kicks in. "Oh, it was nothing." They tell you you've done really well. And you brush it off. "Ah, I just got lucky." It's almost automatic, isn't it? Like a script you've rehearsed your whole life. Instead of owning your success, you soften it, you shrink it down, you make yourself smaller, and if you're honest, you know exactly why. Because if you let them believe you're successful, then the pressure begins. Next time, they'll expect more. Next time, they'll be watching. And the thought of not living up to that, of falling short when the spotlight is on you, that terrifies you. So what do? You get ahead of the disappointment. You lower the bar yourself before anyone else can raise it. You hide your wins under false modesty, hoping that if you make yourself invisible enough, no one will ever see you stumble. But here's the question that haunts so many of us. Why? Why do we sabotage our own shine? Why do we act as if our accomplishments don't count, even when deep down we know how hard we worked for them? Maybe you felt this in school, turning in a project you poured your heart into, only to laugh and say, "Oh, I just threw it together." Maybe you felt it in your career, brushing off recognition with, "Anyone could have done it." Maybe you felt it in relationships, deflecting someone's admiration because it feels safer to stay small than to risk being truly seen. It's painful, isn't it? Because on one level, you want people to see you. You want them to notice what you've done, to appreciate the effort, to validate that you really are good enough. But on another level, the thought of standing out feels dangerous. Like success itself is a trap, and the higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. So you play it safe, you downplay, you diminish, you shrink. And with every casual shrug, every self-deprecating laugh, every time you say it's nothing when it was actually everything to you, you reinforce a story. I'm not really that good, I'm not really enough. But here's the twist you've probably never considered. What if this isn't just a bad habit? What if this pattern of downplaying your successes is actually a defense mechanism? A way your mind has been protecting you from something much deeper? Psychologists have studied this for over a century, and one of them, Alfred Adler, saw right into this struggle. Adler believed that so much of human behavior comes back to one thing, the way we deal with feeling less than. He called it the inferiority feeling. That deep awareness that you're small, imperfect, vulnerable. And the ways we respond to that feeling can shape an entire life. Downplaying your successes, brushing off praise, keeping yourself small, Adler would say this isn't humility at all. It's protection. It's your way of shielding yourself from the crushing weight of expectations, from the terror of being measured and found wanting. But here's the problem. What starts as protection slowly becomes a prison. Because the more you hide your wins, the less you believe in them yourself. The more you minimize your strengths, the harder it becomes to recognize them. And eventually, you're not just convincing others that you're not that special, you're convincing yourself. That's why this matters. Because left unchecked, this quiet, subtle habit has a way of eating at your confidence from the inside out. And if you've ever wondered why you constantly feel like you'll never be good enough, this is one of the hidden reasons. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand not just why you do this, not just why you shrink when you should be shining, but how to finally break free. You'll see your patterns through the eyes of Alfred Adler, one of the founding fathers of modern psychology, whose insights are just as powerful today as they were 100 years ago. And once you understand the hidden psychology behind this struggle, you'll be able to make a choice. You can keep playing small, or you can step into your strength, not because you have to prove yourself, but because you're finally ready to own who you already are. So, let's dive in. Let's be honest, this isn't just a small quirk. It's not some little personality trait, like preferring your coffee with sugar or laughing too loudly at the wrong moments. No, this goes deeper. This shapes how you live, how you move through the world, and how you see yourself. Think about the last time you actually achieved something. Maybe it was something big, acing an exam you were sure you'd fail. Maybe it was standing in front of a room at work and delivering a presentation that landed perfectly. Or maybe it was something smaller, quieter, like cooking a meal for your family and watching their faces light up with genuine joy. For a moment, you felt it, that spark of pride, that relief, that sense of, yes, I did it. But then almost immediately another voice crashed in, a voice so familiar it feels like part of you. Don't get too confident. What if I can't do it again? They're going to expect me to always be this good. And just like that, the glow is gone. You scramble to cover it up, to shrink the moment before it grows too big. You laugh it off, you downplay, you pretend it didn't matter. You say things like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, anyone could have done it. And in doing so, you protect yourself. Or at least, that's how it feels, because keeping the spotlight away feels safe, doesn't it? If they don't notice too much, they won't raise their expectations. If they don't expect much, they won't be disappointed. And if they're not disappointed, then maybe, just maybe, you won't have to feel that sinking weight of letting someone down. But here's the cruel twist. By doing this, by brushing off your own success, you never actually get to own it. You never let yourself fully feel the satisfaction of being good at something. And so the story you carry inside remains unchanged. I'm not really that good, I'm not really enough. Think about the impact of that. You achieve something, but instead of reinforcing confidence, you reinforce doubt. Instead of telling yourself, see, I can do this, you tell yourself, that doesn't count, it was just luck. And so the cycle continues. It's like running a race, crossing the finish line, and then immediately moving the finish line further away. No matter how hard you try, you never let yourself arrive. And over time, this takes a toll. When you don't own your wins, you rob yourself of growth. Because growth comes from acknowledgement, from recognizing what you've done right and building on it. But if you're too busy pretending your achievements don't matter, you never get the chance to learn from them, to build real confidence on a solid foundation. It also affects how others see you. People watch how you treat yourself. If you consistently minimize your value, they begin to believe you. They stop celebrating you. They stop expecting much from you. And the tragedy is that matches the story you already believe about yourself, that you're not enough. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the worst part? You start to believe that your worth only exists in the gap between people's expectations and your ability to meet them. You define yourself not by your achievements, but by how well you can avoid disappointing others. It's exhausting. Living that way means you're never free to simply enjoy the moment. You're always calculating, always bracing yourself, always worried about what comes next. But here's what I want you to really sit with. What if this habit, this reflex of shrinking yourself, isn't actually about success at all? What if it's not about the exam, or the presentation, or the praise from a friend? What if it goes much deeper than that? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Downplaying your wins might look like a strategy for handling success, but at its core, it's really about how you see yourself. It's about that inner narrative, the one that says you're small, fragile, always one mistake away from being exposed. It's about the deep fear that if the world really saw you, if people really believed in you, you wouldn't be able to live up to it. And that fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's rooted in something much older, much deeper, something that psychologists like Alfred Adler spent their lives studying. So here's the cliffhanger I want to leave you with. What if the reason you downplay your successes has almost nothing to do with success itself, and everything to do with the lens through which you view your own existence? Stick with me, because the answer lies in one of the most powerful psychological theories ever written. A theory that might explain not just this habit, but why so many of us go through life feeling like we'll never truly be good enough. This is where Alfred Adler steps into the picture. Adler was one of the early giants of psychology, a contemporary of Freud and Jung, but unlike them, he chose a radically different path. Freud believed much of our behavior was driven by unconscious sexual and aggressive desires. Jung leaned toward archetypes and collective myths. But Adler, he focused on something far more ordinary and in many ways far more human, our deep, gnawing sense of inferiority. According to Adler, every one of us is born small, weak, and utterly dependent. Think about it. A baby can't feed itself, can't walk, can't even hold its own head up. From the very beginning, we're aware, even if we can't articulate it, of how powerless we are compared to the big, capable adults around us. Adler called this awareness the inferiority feeling. Now here's the surprising part. Adler didn't see this inferiority feeling as a flaw. He didn't treat it like a disease or a defect to get rid of. Instead, he saw it as the very engine of human progress. Because we feel small, we strive to grow. Because we feel weak, we push ourselves to become strong. That gap between what we are and what we want to be, that's the source of our drive, our ambition, our desire to improve. In other words, inferiority isn't the enemy, it's the fuel. But there's a twist. Sometimes that sense of inferiority grows too heavy. Instead of motivating us, it crushes us. Instead of pushing us to get better, it convinces us we'll never be good enough no matter how hard we try. And when that happens, Adler said, we start to develop what he called safeguarding strategies. These are clever little tricks our minds play to protect us from the unbearable sting of failure, embarrassment, or rejection. And one of the most common strategies? Downplaying your own success. Think about what happens when you brush off a compliment. Someone says, "That was amazing," and you quickly reply, "Oh, it was nothing." On the surface, it sounds like humility. It sounds modest, but Adler would argue, no, it's not modesty at all. It's a shield. Because if you admit you're good at something, if you own your skill, your talent, your strength, then suddenly the stakes rise. People will expect more from you. They'll test you. They'll raise the bar. And deep down, if you still carry that raw sense of inferiority, the thought of being tested feels unbearable. So what do? You preempt the challenge. You lower the bar yourself before anyone else has the chance to raise it. You protect yourself by saying, no, I'm not that good, so no one will demand proof. It's a form of self-sabotage that masquerades as humility. And here's where it gets even deeper. Adler pointed out that the people who hide behind these strategies are often the ones who are most sensitive to feelings of inadequacy. They crave recognition, but fear it. They want to shine, but can't stand the pressure of staying in the spotlight. So they live in this constant tug of war, a yearning for success mixed with a terror of being exposed as not enough. That's why you downplay. That's why you shrink when praised. Not because you're genuinely humble, but because admitting your worth feels like opening a door to scrutiny. And scrutiny in your mind is just one step away from humiliation. Let's pause here and ask a powerful question. If inferiority is supposed to be the fuel that helps us grow, why does it feel so crushing for so many of us? Why do some people use it as motivation while others use it as a reason to hide? The answer, Adler would say, lies in how we interpret that feeling at our core. Do we see inferiority as a challenge to rise above, or as proof that we'll never measure up? And if it's the second, if you've been interpreting it as proof of your own inadequacy, then your whole life becomes built around protection instead of growth. You don't risk, you don't own your success, you don't step forward. Instead, you hide behind strategies, which leaves us with the real question. Why do you feel like you need to protect yourself so badly? That's where we need to go next. Here's where Adler gets even more insightful. He argued that people with strong inferiority feelings often carry a hidden fear, the fear of expectations. And if you think about it, this fear explains so much of why we downplay ourselves. Let me give you an example. Imagine you ace an exam at school. The teacher praises you. Your parents beam with pride. For one moment, you feel incredible. But then, in the back of your mind, a quiet voice whispers, "Now they'll expect you to do this every time. What if you can't?" Suddenly, the joy of your success turns into dread. You're no longer celebrating the achievement. You're calculating how hard it will be to live up to it again. And so, the next time someone praises you, you shrug it off. It was just luck. It wasn't that hard. Anyone could have done it. On the surface, it looks like humility. But deep down, it's fear management. You're lowering the bar before someone else raises it for you. Adler believed this was one of the most common traps people fall into when they're dominated by inferiority feelings. You stop seeing success as something to enjoy, and instead you see it as a threat, because success comes with the burden of repeating it. Think about it in everyday life. Maybe you did something thoughtful for your partner. You cooked them dinner or planned a surprise outing. They loved it, but the very next thought was, great, now they'll expect me to keep doing things like this. What if I can't? What if I disappoint them? So the next time, you hesitate. You hold back. You'd rather do nothing than risk failing the new standard. Or take work. You go the extra mile on a project. Your boss is impressed. They say, "I knew I could count on you." And instead of feeling proud, you feel trapped. Because now you're the reliable one. And that role comes with pressure, pressure you didn't ask for. So you start pulling back, you stop giving 100%, not because you're lazy, but because you're terrified of the expectations that come with being good. It's ironic, isn't it? You work so hard to protect yourself from failure that you end up failing yourself in the process. And Adler would say, this isn't freedom, it's a cage. You think by brushing off compliments, by downplaying wins, by making yourself small, you're staying safe. But in reality, you're just shrinking your world. You're robbing yourself of joy in the present because you're haunted by a fear of tomorrow. Here's where I want you to pause and reflect. How many times in your life have you actually robbed yourself of joy because you were too busy preemptively lowering people's expectations? Think of moments when someone congratulated you and you immediately dismissed it. Think of times when you wanted to celebrate but instead cracked a self-deprecating joke. Think of opportunities you didn't take, not because you weren't capable, but because you were terrified that succeeding once would chain you to a standard you didn't believe you could maintain. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? And here's what makes it worse. Every time you do this, you reinforce the belief that you're not enough. It becomes a cycle. The less you accept praise, the less you internalize your strengths. The less you internalize your strengths, the weaker you feel. And the weaker you feel, the more you fear expectations. Around and around it goes. This is why Adler's insights are so powerful. He helps us see that avoiding expectations doesn't liberate us, it enslaves us. By trying to duck under the weight of other people's hopes, we actually end up weighed down even more heavily by our own doubts. And if this resonates with you, make sure to hit like and subscribe right now, because this channel is all about uncovering these hidden psychological patterns, the ones shaping your life without you realizing it and helping you break free. But don't go anywhere, because here's the twist. This habit of downplaying yourself doesn't just protect you from fear. It secretly holds you back in ways you probably don't even see. And once you understand that, everything changes. Let's talk about the cost, because make no mistake, there is one. Every time you downplay your success, every time you brush off praise, every time you act like what you did wasn't really worth noticing, you're paying a quiet, invisible price. At first, it feels harmless, maybe even strategic. You think you're protecting yourself. You think you're dodging pressure. You think you're keeping people's expectations low so you'll never have to face their disappointment. But here's the truth. You're also sending a message, not just to other people, but to yourself. And that message is devastatingly clear. I don't believe I deserve this. Now, you may never actually say those words out loud, but your actions say it for you. Every time you laugh off a compliment, every time you cut your own achievement down to size, you're declaring, without realizing it, that your success doesn't count. And here's the danger. People believe you. Over time, the people around you stop celebrating your wins. They stop expecting brilliance from you. They stop thinking of you as someone to bet on, someone who can deliver, someone who can rise when it matters most. It's not that they dislike you. It's not that they don't respect you. It's simply this. You've trained them. You've conditioned them to see you as average. You've convinced them that your light isn't worth noticing. And when the world stops noticing, something even worse happens. You stop noticing. The very joy you're trying to protect yourself from losing never even has a chance to take root. Instead, it's replaced with a hollow kind of invisibility. You do something well, you cut it down, people move on, and the moment vanishes. Nothing gets stored in your memory as proof that you're capable. Nothing builds your inner reservoir of confidence. And so the story you carry, the one that whispers, "I'm not really good enough," gets stronger and stronger. Because what evidence do you have to challenge it? You've erased your own wins before they could even leave a mark. This is how a tragic cycle forms. You downplay your success. You feel invisible. You confirm the belief, "See, I'm not good enough." And then you repeat over weeks, months, years. That cycle eats away at you. It doesn't just keep you small, it actively holds you back. Think about opportunities, promotions, friendships, relationships. People invest in those who believe in themselves. They're drawn to people who radiate, "Yes, I can handle this." Not arrogance, not cockiness, but grounded self-belief. But if you're constantly minimizing your value, people take you at your word. They think, "Oh, she's not really interested." Oh, he's not leadership material. Oh, they don't seem that serious. And slowly, those doors you always wanted to walk through start closing. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you never allowed yourself to look like you were. And here's the most painful part. You've been trying to avoid disappointment, but in the process, you've created it. You were so afraid of letting people down that you never gave yourself the chance to lift them up. You were so afraid of failing that you trained everyone around you to stop expecting anything at all. This is the quiet tragedy Adler was pointing to. He saw it not in people who failed, but in people who feared success so much that they erased it from their own story. Because success, when owned, builds you. It strengthens you. It teaches you, yes, I can rise again. But success, when dismissed, starves you. It keeps you trapped in the same story. I'm not enough. I never will be. So here's the real cost. Every time you cut yourself down, you don't just lose the moment. You lose a piece of yourself. You chip away at the very foundation of your confidence. And over time, the version of you that could have been bold, that could have stepped into bigger rooms, that could have embraced opportunity, never fully gets the chance to exist. And so the question becomes this: if this is what's been running your life, if this cycle has been quietly stealing your joy and your future, how do you break it? That's where we're headed next. So if downplaying yourself is a trap, how do you get out of it? Alfred Adler, the father of individual psychology, had a surprisingly practical answer. And it wasn't about fixing yourself or somehow becoming flawless. In fact, he believed that chasing perfection is exactly what keeps you stuck. The key, he argued, is to shift how you see success in the first place. Let's break it down. Step 1. Stop comparing yourself to others. Alfred was clear about this. Comparison is the soil where inferiority grows. The more you measure yourself against others, the more you guarantee you'll feel small. Because here's the truth. There will always be someone ahead of you. Someone richer, someone more attractive, someone who seems to have everything figured out. If your worth depends on outrunning them, you will never win. But that's not what life is about. Your worth isn't measured on their scale. It's measured on your own, by what you bring, by how you show up, by the ways you grow. The moment you let go of comparison, you step off the treadmill of never enough and onto a path where you can finally breathe. Step 2, reframe success. Most people ask themselves, did I prove myself today? And that's the question that keeps you chained to fear. Because the minute you stumble, you feel like the proof has vanished. Adler flipped the script. He said, instead of asking, did I prove myself? Ask, did I contribute something meaningful? See the difference? Proving yourself is about performance. It's about showing the world that you're worthy over and over again. Contribution, on the other hand, is about value. It's about impact. You're no longer trying to live up to someone's expectations. You're focused on what you can give. And the beautiful thing about contribution is that it grows with you. Even small acts matter. Even when you're not at your best, you can still add something to the world around you. Step 3, reinterpret expectations. Here's the biggest mental shift of all. What if expectations weren't traps? What if they were opportunities? Think about it. When people expect something from you, it means they've already seen your potential. They've seen what you're capable of. That's not pressure. That's proof. Proof that you've already done enough to inspire belief in them. Instead of running from that, what if you leaned into it? What if you stopped seeing expectations as weights and started seeing them as wings? Because here's the paradox. The very thing you're afraid of, people believing in you, is actually the thing that will push you further than you could go alone. And here's where Adler's brilliance shines. The more you accept your strengths, the less you'll fear what others think. The moment you embrace your successes instead of minimizing them, you break the cycle. You stop living small. You stop feeding the lie that you're undeserving. But there's one last question, the question that probably keeps you up at night. Even if you stop comparing, even if you reframe success, even if you embrace expectations as opportunities, how do you finally feel good enough in your own skin? Because that's the real root of this struggle, isn't it? It's not just about praise. It's not just about fear. It's about that deep, quiet voice inside that says, no matter what I do, I'll never be enough. That's where we're headed next. Here's where Adler leaves us with one of his most powerful and underrated ideas: the concept of Gemeinschaftsgefühl, community feeling. At first glance, the word sounds heavy, maybe even abstract, but what it points to is profoundly human, something you've felt many times in your life without realizing. The deep sense of belonging, of being tied into something larger than yourself. Think about the last time you truly felt at home in a moment. Maybe it was sitting with friends laughing so hard you couldn't breathe. Maybe it was helping someone, even in a small way, and seeing gratitude light up their face. Maybe it was in those quiet seconds when you felt connected to the world around you, like you weren't just surviving, but belonging. That's Gemeinschaftsgefühl. And Adler believed that this was the true antidote to the endless question of, am I good enough? Because notice what that question does. It isolates you. It places you in a one-on-one duel with yourself. Every achievement becomes a test. Every failure becomes a verdict. And the jury is everyone you meet, their expectations, their judgments, their reactions. No wonder we shrink. No wonder we downplay our successes. It feels safer to stay invisible than to risk that kind of constant exposure. But what if enough was never about you versus them? What if it was about us? Adler argued that when we focus on belonging and contribution, the obsession with proving ourselves begins to fade. The scale you've been carrying around, the one where you measure whether you're impressive, smart, or talented enough, starts to lose its grip. Why? Because worth is no longer a contest. It's not about standing above others. It's about standing with them. Take this in for a moment. You're not good enough because you're flawless. You're not good enough because you've racked up more achievements than the person next to you. You're good enough because you matter, because your presence, your effort, your contribution makes a difference in ways you probably underestimate. Think about the last time someone encouraged you, even in a small way. Maybe it was a teacher who told you, you've got potential. Maybe it was a friend who said, I'm proud of you. Maybe it was a colleague who noticed your effort when you thought no one cared. Did you stop to realize that you've likely played that same role for someone else? That your words, your actions, your quiet successes have rippled outward, shaping lives in ways you don't even see? This is what Adler meant. When you understand yourself as part of a community, your wins stop being ammunition for judgment. They become gifts to be shared. Your success becomes less about, do I measure up, and more about, what am I bringing to the table? And in that shift, the question of being enough slowly dissolves. Let's push this deeper. Imagine two people climbing the same mountain. One climbs to stand at the summit alone, to shout, I made it. The other climbs because at the top, they'll have a view that they can bring back to their village, to help others see what's possible, to share knowledge, to give courage. The first person is consumed with proving themselves. The second is fueled by contribution. And here's the paradox Adler understood. The second climber, the one who climbs for others, ends up feeling stronger, more confident, more fulfilled. Because success, when shared, doesn't isolate. It roots you. So how do you begin enough? You start small. You notice the ways you already contribute. The smile that eased someone's stress, the idea you added in a meeting, the effort you put into something that no one else wanted to touch. You begin to tell yourself, this matters. Then you practice owning your successes, not as trophies, but as tools. When you say, yes, I did that, you're not bragging. You're acknowledging a gift you can bring into the community. You're saying, here's what I've got, let's see how it can serve. That's when you realize something life-changing. The real success isn't in proving yourself, it's in being yourself. Fully, unapologetically, with all the strengths you've built and all the imperfections you carry. Because when you bring your authentic self into connection with others, you no longer have to ask, am I enough? The answer is lived, not spoken. It shows up in the lives you touch, in the belonging you create, in the legacy you leave behind, and that's the doorway out of the cycle. No more hiding, no more shrinking, no more downplaying so people won't expect much. Because now, you're not living to avoid expectations, you're living to meet opportunities. And every success you own isn't a threat. It's a contribution. That's Adler's invitation. Step into the truth that you were never meant to carry the weight of enoughness alone. You were meant to carry it together with others. And once you do, the need to downplay yourself finally begins to fade. So here's the truth. Downplaying yourself keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small. And maybe it's time to take the risk of being seen, because the world doesn't need the watered-down version of you. It needs your full self, the one that dares to own its light, even if it means facing expectations. If this video sparked something in you, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We've got more coming that will help you understand the hidden patterns in your mind. And most importantly, how to break free. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be perfect to be good enough. You already are. Before you click away, I want to leave you with something powerful. Don't just listen to this message. Live with it. Take a moment after this video to write down how it made you feel. Did something click? Did it stir up an old memory? Did it give you relief? Or maybe even resistance? Whatever it is, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Because here's the thing, this channel isn't just about me talking at you. We're starting a series where I'll be reading out your real psychological struggles, and together we'll explore them through the lens of different great thinkers. Adler, Rogers, Jung, and others. You'll even be able to choose which psychologist you'd like me to use as a guide for addressing your difficulty. So think of this as more than a video. Think of it as the beginning of a conversation. Share your story, let your voice be heard, and maybe, just maybe, the words you write today will help someone else who feels like they're not enough. And if that resonates with you, subscribe and join us, because this community is about more than content. It's about healing, insight, and the courage to be fully human.